Ladies, gentlemen, and all those in between, welcome to, I think, our first comic review of the channel.
Definitely the first comic book review, yep.
Yeah, welcome guys to our first episode dealing with comic books. After 4 years, we're finally doing comic books.
Yeah, and ever since I switched to reading digitally, I've been reading a fuck ton of comics, so...
Oh yeah, you've been reading way more comics, which is nice.
It's opened the doors for me. But for this episode, we're going to be covering DC, The New Frontier.
The inaugural episode. And why is that, sir?
Because the next film on our DC retrospective is Justice League, The New Frontier, so...
Yes. So it seems appropriate at this time.
And it's wonderful, because I never read this book before. Probably would have never read it.
I rented the graphic novel, in parts. I think the first 2 or 1 trade paperbacks, or graphic novel, about 6 years ago, I'd say. I couldn't honestly tell you what. It was obviously the beginning with the losers. I remember that part, and I don't know if I got to the point where... I remember reading the part of John Henry. I remember that part. But after that, I don't remember anything. So, but this is the first time I have read this. First time. This is the second time. As of today, it was the second time I read it all the way through. And you've read this how many times, sir?
I read it once all the way through, and then on my second read for this podcast, I read it once about a month ago. But I figured I'd do a little bit of a refresher. But I only got to... It was the scene with Hal and Abin Sur having their little chat. That's when I had to stop, and I didn't get a chance to go back, so...
Okay. By the way, everybody, happy Super Bowl Sunday to date myself here. But it is an American tradition, of course, and this book is very American. To the point
yes.
of it was written by a Canadian, so...
Oh, really? Darwin Cook's Canadian? I didn't know that.
He is from Nova Scotia, I believe.
Interesting.
Let me fact check that before I'm talking out of my butt.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly ask, have you read anything else by Darwin Cook?
Other than some of the stories that he wrote in the back of this, no, but now I certainly want to.
Yeah, me too.
Toronto, Canada. There we go.
Oh, okay, Toronto.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious to see if he wrote on anyone else, or drew on anyone else's books. So.
That's a good point. Look at the episode. I would suggest to you, Caleb, and to the audience, go watch the Comic Tropes episode he recently put up about Darwin Cook, because he reviewed this mighty book as well.
Oh,
and
I didn't know that.
His other stuff that he had done. So that's another... That'll give you guys some facts, but here we're talking about... Probably talk about some of that stuff maybe further down the line, but for now we're talking about The New Frontier. So, Caleb, how did you feel about The New Frontier?
Okay,
Very
nice. I
nice.
wrote on my board. The board's it's green, by the way. I'm definitely feeling this one.
Yes,
but I wrote, this book made me feel like I need to reevaluate my stance on reading teen books, because I've never cared in the slightest about reading a Justice League book until this read. So I fucking love this thing. I thought I guess I shouldn't do a summary yet, but you go ahead and do your part.
This book made me feel compelled to write socially conscious stories with these characters during the 1960s. It was, yeah. I obviously I'm showing my true colors, of course. Flipping the sign, I'm feeling it. I'm really feeling it.
Yeah, it's funny. What you said there made me think of a previous board that I'd written out and then erased, where it was, I said, this book made me feel like the Justice League should only exist in the 50s and 60s, because this is just a perfect setting for them and to explore their ideas and to kind of look at what the America they represented was. Because, I mean, Justice League in 2020, I mean, I feel like what's there to really comment on, you know? I mean...
I honestly agree. I can't agree more. I think, and do you think that's the same with Avengers, or no?
I've never read a single Avengers book, so I've got no clue. But yeah, I don't know what they would look like.
They certainly look like... The Marvel Cinematic Universe has certainly made them exist nowadays, whereas DC has not done a good job of showing their spotlight team of being translatable in the 21st century. Excuse me.
Yeah, and I mean that could be why. I mean, I have like maybe like 7 or 8 Justice League comics that I read as a kid. They were all from the early 2000s. The art was terrible. I wish I had pulled them out so I could say who drew them, but yeah, I read them, and I never had any interest in reading any other DC or any other Justice League books, and so even in my adulthood, I still had that same kind of bias. But this book's completely opened the doors. Like, if I don't know if there's going to be a lot of other stuff like this, but I'll definitely be more open to reading any Justice League books that sound interesting. So,
Do you know when this book was published?
2006, right?
Yes, 2004, 2005, and 2008. I think that was when like I don't know, absolute, but some of the editions were re-released, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I don't think going back to what you said, I don't think the Justice League can't exist nowadays. I think the roster needs to change. DC very much believes in legacy, and I also believe in legacy characters more than I do multiverse. And so I think if we had a different lineup of members on the Justice League in the 21st century, I think it could probably be way more applicable. Because you have the Justice League of the 60s, the JSA of the 40s, and whatever happens in between, and then you could probably still have the Justice League exist today, but they have to be a different set of characters.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and I guess we'll get into more about what the characters represent for their stories and how that kind of comes together as a whole. But
this is certainly a character-centric book. Not a character-centric book, but it is character-driven. There we go. It's driven by the characters. I don't think driven by the action.
Until we get to the last bit, but we'll talk about that as well. But I guess we should start.
Well, actually, sorry. Beforehand, your best thing, worst thing.
Best thing is, I don't know. It's a dance between the writing and the art. What's funny is I feel like as the story, because I wouldn't say that the story starts to lose me in the end, but I become less interested in what's going on in the end. But the art takes a whole another level, I feel like, once we start getting into some of that crazy stuff that we see at the end. So I mean, the whole book is just so well rounded. The worst thing, actually, I'd say the worst thing is some of the editing choices. Which we'll definitely get into. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. You'll bring that up when we get to those scenes, I assume.
Yeah. But same to you. Best thing, worst thing.
My best thing, the whole book. No, I could not think of like one good thing. That's not true. That's me being sarcastic. This is really stupid. It's very minor. Wonder Woman being taller than Superman.
Oh, I don't think I noticed that.
Yeah, I don't think you noticed it either, but I noticed it immediately. I was like, that's amazing. I'm glad that we finally, because Amazon's in either certain media depictions, and not read much Greek mythology with them, but they're always said to be very tall women, like very tall, muscular, but equally beautiful women. And we finally have that with Wonder Woman here, and she's tall. And of course, Gal Gadot is probably the closest thing to a statuesque stunner. But then there's Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck next to her, and they're like just giants.
Yeah, that's fair.
So she's I think she's the tallest woman to probably play Wonder Woman so far. But yeah, it's just nice to finally see Wonder Woman standing over Superman. I don't know, that's so weird for me to say, but I just enjoy that.
Which is perfect for their dichotomy in the book. I mean,
absolutely,
it's that constant battle between their ideologies.
And then worst thing. I have two. Intrinsically, the little girl John Wilson meets.
Oh, really? That's your worst thing?
That's, well, intrinsically. Extrinsically, additional focus on the cult of the center and John Jones bringing up John Wilson to Faraday.
Oh, okay.
After he comes back. Again, I'll probably elaborate a little more on that. And maybe elaborate what I meant with the cult. I mean, the paranoia of the center tying more to the Cold War paranoia. I was kind of hoping we got a little more of that, because I feel like we have the center, but we have just all these characters, and we're jumping everywhere to all these different characters around the DC universe at this time. But I feel like there's some out of focus moments with the center, and I wish there was more paranoia amongst it, because we're told that but you always want to do show don't tell. And there are
Mm-hmm.
parts I don't want to give it that like, but maybe again only my second read, and I did see a lot of different stuff or notice a lot of different things this time around, the second time around.
Yeah, I'll say on my second reading, some of the center stuff felt a little bit more fleshed out than it did the first
Yes.
time around. But yeah, I guess we'll get into it here.
Okay, so there's the introduction, of course, by Paul Levitz. There's that, and there's the prologue, where we basically get a general what's going on after World War II. It is right after World War II. We start on this island in the Pacific. Yeah, 1945, and we get the story of the losers. And right now, I have no idea who the losers are, but boy, does Darwin Cook know who they are, and certainly gives them all a voice.
Yeah, and of course, I love, there's that old Arthur Conan Doyle. I know it more from the movie that they made, but like The Lost World.
The Lost World.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, I love the idea of an island out there with dinosaurs on it, and so I really enjoyed this early section here.
That's fair. Although I don't know if these are actually dinosaurs. I don't believe they're they're obviously not the traditional dinosaurs we know
No.
of, but I wouldn't classify these things as those that walked the earth many moons ago.
No, they're kind of like a weird, like maybe what the center like viewed them as. They're like almost his imitation of them.
Yeah,
But I love the tone of that early losers section. The art is of course great as it is through the whole book, but it's got a little bit more of a horror vibe to it.
yeah.
Pretty fun.
The tone is nice. I do enjoy the mixtures of the tones and how we jump between the supernatural or the superhuman and then the street level.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just wonderful. Like it takes in like a certain D&D campaign or tabletop campaign or whatever, you have a bunch of normal people who go up against this this Tyrannosaurus Rex. Not so much supernatural, but like it's still sort of natural, but of course there's going to be somebody's lives going to be cost. And yeah, no, that was the gunner in the losers, and he just immediately dies. And it takes they don't even kill a T-Rex, they just blow off like part of its arm and then it just leaves. It's like I can't I gotta find more like prey to eat, which is interesting that all the dinosaurs still like attack each other or eat each other. That's interesting. They're almost sentient and free-willed to go around the island, but then like I guess once the center calls for them to do something, they lose all their individuality and become mindless machines.
Yeah, it's just like his own little piece of chaos out there
Yeah,
in the middle of nowhere.
they all become cannon fodder. Yeah, then the Sarge goes out and tries hunting the T-Rex down, I believe, and to get a lay of the land. And then we have the other two remaining guys, John Cloud and the other guy, I forget his name, and Skipper, and he gets hauled off by what looks to be a pterodactyl. And other than that, we find Colonel Rick Flagg, who leader of the Suicide Squad at this point. Or is it Task Force X? No, yeah, it's Task Force X. It will be Suicide Squad later on. Oh yeah, why are they on this island? Because Nazi scientists who were appropriated, whatever you want to call it, by the United States and the Russians after the war, needed to get from point A to point B, and something happened in between traveling, and they have to get back, or they go radio silent, and afterwards they call on the losers to find them. And that's where we end off here. And so he escorts Rick Flag back to the platoon they have with them, the little dinghy. What does he say here? He says, oh yeah, here. Most people I encounter regard the Navito as savages, but it was my American side that demanded vengeance for the lives of my fellow warriors. And yeah, that certainly shows John as a character. I'll say that, just being loyal towards his crew. And I very much enjoyed that part. And I love the irony of when he's going to defeat. He first goes to destroy the T-Rex. Excuse me. He doesn't even realize that a line dropped by Flag earlier that he booby traps some of the island and just hits a tripwire, and just goes off and like just mangles him and destroys his dog, or kills his dog. And then finally takes two grenades out and unclips them and goes right into the T-Rex's mouth, and boom! John Cloud was a loser.
I love that shot of John Cloud jumping into the T-Rex's mouth on
that was amazing.
Page 41.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
technically page 40. I guess
I
on,
think
on
it's
mine
41
in front of me.
Oh, yeah, it's 40 on mine, too, actually. I'm not sure why I said 41.
That's okay.
Even says 40 on my notes.
Yeah, please call out like what page number. Yeah, page numbers are perfect for this one.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, then we get that great little kind of a summary of what the book's talking about with the whole, where all the heroes go. Kind of just looking at what America's turned into post the war.
yep. I love the fact that on page 43 we have an explanation of why the superheroes were not involved in the war efforts in Europe, because Hitler had control of the legendary Spear of Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his, I guess, failsafe, or was it absolute? What's that term? Not failsafe.
Mutual destruction or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, when both like with both sides have like the same amount of arms, and there's like a standoff, not a standoff.
Yeah, I forget what that's called. Stalemate.
Stalemate.
Kind of
Thank you.
deal.
Yeah. They even like say that in the panel below that one. In the conclusion of the war in the Pacific was another story. The advent of nuclear warfare gave man the ability to destroy the world several times over. With scant years of their alliance to defeat the Nazis, the chasm between America and Russian ideologies deepened, with the deadly concordance of warheads creating a stalemate. There we go. Yeah, it says it right there. Stalemate. The Cold War began, an era of espionage, blackmail, nationalistic propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, this was released 2004. It's so funny that this was released the same year as The Incredibles.
Yeah, that is funny. That's definitely funny.
And how there's similar, what would you call it? There's similar themes in both this book and the movie, and how the superheroes were they even mentioned the word retire. But again, it's all coincidence. There's no way. I don't think I think Darwin Cook knew who Brad Bird was. I don't know if they ever worked together, because I don't think Brad Bird... He worked at Warner Brothers for Iron Giant, but he never worked in like the DC animation department, I believe, which Darwin Cook was very much part of.
Mm.
And so I don't know, it's fun. A lot of people might throw like, oh, why they both had the same ideas. Well, I when it gets down to it, I think there are just some ideas that make sense.
Yeah. And it's kind of writing that kind of Watchmen in a way, kind of looking back and placing them in a different kind of context, and with like the Nixon thing too. So
yeah, and he's in this book. Funny enough.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but I was gonna say in that little montage, I love that they have poor Shazam or Captain Marvel for you, where they're like, others were simple-minded patriots, happy to wave so long and go peddle their papers. I was like, oh, poor bastard.
It is funny because he wasn't DC at the time. He was Fawcett Comics in Fawcett City. And it wasn't until the 60s when DC bought out that company and all the rights to him. So I like the fact that Darwin integrates them integrates him and several other characters, I believe, into the DC universe proper here, which is nice.
Oh, I thought so. I thought you were saying maybe that's why they gave him this little bit of bad press here, but...
Yes and no.
Yeah, I love the way he mixes in so many people. Some of the people I'd only like very vaguely heard of. So I was like, oh, that's kind of fun that they're throwing him in here. These really not well-known people at all.
Yeah, like nobody knows who the losers are. Nobody knows who the challengers of the unknown were. People might know who Task Force X is. And he wanted to do a lot with the Blackhawks, but I think DC gave him a mandate saying, no, you can't use them. And it's like, what? Oh, okay. So that is a little weird. I like that the Spectre's there, and then a rare few displayed the cunning and conviction to evade capture.
Yeah,
Very
like
nice.
Sir Batman. Yeah, but then we cut to very young Hal Jordan here, going to see one of the heroes who worked with his dad, Chuck Yeager. And I also like how they bring in real-world figures like that and just kind of throw them in for little cameos usually.
Oh, yeah. It's wonderful. I gotta not just say that, but I do enjoy that. I don't know... When it comes to novels, like print books, not so much colored books or books with illustrations in it, but I don't know where the line is between where you have to get permission and free use, because we have Chuck
Yeah.
Yeager in here and we have Walter Cronkite in here as well. I guess you can use like public figures like the presidents and political leaders, but I don't know about actors because I don't know if they're a little bit like uppity. It depends on who's in the free domain and not.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure how long that lasts. Like 7 years after someone's death or something like that.
Like we get obviously we'll see a prominent boxer, and there's in the same like chapter we have a big prominent singer at the time as well.
Oh yeah, I was gonna mention that. Yeah, I love that. Captain Cold blows the shit out of Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, that's funny.
But before we get to that, of course, we get Hal Jordan in his last flight during the end of the Korean War there.
Well, before that, first we're in Gotham City, 1952, and it's the apprehension or trying to apprehend the superhero known as, or vigilante, excuse me, known as Hourman. And we have this great cover story, Political Affairs by Iris West, who you probably didn't know who she was, but after, I don't know how long you read that, this little story that she did.
Oh, I read all that stuff, but yeah.
I always love like when writers go into newspaper reels, and actually it's a great way of getting to know that character as well and what they stand for. She is technically, I think, unbiased in this situation, but I think there's a hint of she's pissed off at what's going on at the situation at hand.
Yeah, a little bit of a hint. Yeah.
There's always that tone in whatever somebody writes, but
Yeah, and I mean, not even really necessarily a hint. I mean, she ends it basically praising our man as like this hero.
oh yeah,
So,
he was principled and flawed, loved by those he helped, and vilified by those that sought to control him. Upon posthumanist reflection, a tragic irony is revealed. Rex Tyler, aka the Hourman, was a quintessential American. And boy, that's a big theme about like what it means to be an American throughout this whole novel, this entire like book.
yeah.
It is certainly fascinating in what that tells. This is obviously not the end all be all commentary or not commentary review of this book, and many others have probably critiqued and analyzed this book further than either of us have. But yeah, I also love the initial like Batman and Superman duked it out, and both are just ideologically opposed.
Mm-hmm.
Still better than BVS,
Oh, I mean, of course.
maybe, I don't know.
But yes, we get Hal Jordan.
We're now in chapter 3.
Yeah, so I mean, should we do more summaries instead of kind of, because we're already like 40 minutes here. I'm sure it's only actually half an hour, but
I want to cut this out, but I was really wanting to do like this is probably going to be a long commentary. Let's put it that way. This is going to be a long one.
yeah, but I mean, it's over 500 pages. I mean, we can't. No.
Exactly. So we can do it. But anyway, yeah. So we have Hal Jordan. Basically, we get it here that he certainly does not want to kill these Vietnam. Sorry, no, not Vietnam. This is the Korean War. Pardon me. This is the Korean War.
Korean War, yeah.
We don't get it yet, but we certainly get a really cool action scene of his co-pilot, Ace Morgan, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, Colonel Ace Morgan, doing a really cool stunt of which I guess Mission Impossible Fallout did this stunt, where it was like they had to get the parachute or get him out of his or get his parachute released. Not so much in this fashion, but similarly. Yeah, and then we have Miss Lane and Jimmy Olsen also in South Korea, and they're leaving off. So that's a good setup to where they are. And again, nice seeing.
Yeah, she's heading back to Seoul for a nice bath.
Yes, she really wants that bath. Nice little setup there, given us that there were reporters here as well. I mean, there always were reporters.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly call out page 65 again, just a beautiful little piece of art with Lois Lane peeling the orange.
Certainly peeling the orange and where she got it from.
But yeah, so Hal, of course, his ship gets shot down because some North Korean fighters didn't hear about the war ending, and he lands in a trench with another soldier who didn't hear about the war ending.
Yeah, apparently that was a real thing, and it kind of makes sense that not all sides knew about the ceasefire at some point.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Where you read the instance where there's still fighting amongst the ceasefire, but that's fair. It's just the knowledge and the information wasn't given to them at that point. So
Yeah, but the helicopter that Lois and Jimmy are taken back just happens to come by.
yep,
So they pick Hal up, but it's too late because he already killed the soldier.
he's trying not to, and of course, as probably many people said, and not to be a broken record, I love what happens at the end where Miss Lane is interviewing him, and he speaks Korean because he was desperately trying to remember what was the words, what was the sentence to say, it's over, make war no more.
Yeah, and have you watched the film yet?
I did years ago. I haven't recently, but I think that's in there, I believe. Have you recently watched it?
Yeah, I watched it yesterday. Yeah,
Nice.
Well, I guess we'll talk about that in the commentary for that.
Yeah. Chapter 4, Gods and Monsters. The arrival of the Martian... He's not called Martian Manhunter in this, by the way.
Yeah, just John Jones.
That's pretty funny. He's legit, yeah, just John Jones or John Jones. And I love how Darwin Cook draws him.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's really good. And he also throws in a line. I don't know if it's not in either page 78 or 79, but he throws it in later that this is his way out. He throws away a line that says he has fuzzy memories of what Mars was like, and that's a perfect way of like, oh, what was we certainly want to see Martian life. I don't want to do that. So I always wonder if this was like because this is certainly a great pilot. This is a great pilot book. A good starting off point for a Justice League series if you ever wanted to do that. Even some solo stuff as well.
Yeah, but I don't think I'd want to see them continue this. It's such a perfect little small story.
It certainly is.
And everything's, all their little points are encapsulated by the end of it, so I don't really know if there's too much to explore afterwards. But yeah, it's a very brief scene with just him arriving unintentionally, and then kind of, I don't even think we see him take the guy's identity at this point.
Not yet. That's a little later. But now on page 80, we have by Clark Kent a little story he wrote about what's going on in Indochina, in the French region, I believe they said, and what Superman and Wonder Woman are up to.
Yeah, and this is actually my favorite part of the book.
Yep.
Both times I read it, this is my favorite part of the book. Because, yeah, he's off looking for Wonder Woman because she's been missing in action, I guess.
Because they are both controlled by the government now, or at least, pardon me, in the service of the government.
Yeah, and he comes across a little village area with a whole bunch of dead bodies, and then a hut with a whole bunch of celebrating people, and Wonder Woman's there in the center, a whole bunch of women just having a ball. And yeah,
Spoils of war, as they say.
Yeah, and he finds out that Wonder Woman rescued all these women who were basically being used as sex slaves.
Yep.
And she gave them the weapons, and they massacred all those men, and he's just horrified by it.
She didn't do anything. She beat the guys up, knocked them out, and left the guns there, and was like, whatever happens wasn't my decision. I made no choice after that.
She basically set them up to be massacred. I mean,
Highly implied.
Yeah, but just especially the way Darwin Cook draws Clark during these scenes.
Yep.
Just makes him look so naive and kind of just the what would you call him?
Well, remember they said they called her the Immortal, I believe, back in what was the page number now? Give me a second here. Yeah, let's see. By an immortal and an alien. I think you're right, because Diana's immortal, and Clark is much more naive, and there is that Kansas upbringing that is probably where he does try to believe in the good of all humanity. But during this time of American history, it's certainly testing him. I'll say that.
Yeah, and there's kind of an air about him where he almost feels like he's like a character out of like a 50s, very American, like kind of upstanding citizen. He always does what's right, and just doesn't kind of see the gray areas of the real world.
Remember, the Big Blue Boy Scout.
The Big Blue Boy Scout, exactly.
That is certainly what he is, and this is probably one of the best depictions of the Trinity I've ever seen, even though we don't see them at all like together until like some of the after issues, the issues that he wrote afterwards. But it's always weird when you pair those three up, because we said before that Batman is a balance between the the light and the dark, and he can go to both sides easily, but also go back to them as easily as that. But also, Wonder Woman is also that, I believe, as well. So it's where you would always try to have the gray, the black, and the white as your trio. But this is like we have two grays and a white as the Trinity in DC, which is interesting.
I wouldn't even call her gray. I just think she's realistic. I mean, I
That's
guess
true.
you could say being realistic is gray.
Perhaps.
But like she said, like this is Civil War. All she did was gave them a chance to survive in like a chaotic place.
Yeah.
I mean, what would have Clark done had he come along to the village? I mean, I don't know.
Probably, chain them up and taking them in due process and go about the system.
Yeah, maybe tried to bring some like aid to these women, and then a couple months later, when a new group strolls in, takes over again, just set them right back up for failure again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess moving past that, do you have anything else to say about that scene, or?
That's where we get, how Wonder Woman is taller than him. And that's also, again, to your naivety Superman point of just her looking over him. And, again, her being immortal, she has a lot more views on the world and eons of training and probably experience from the other Amazons that were around at the time before they separated from the Greek culture. Perhaps, I don't remember if they are off the Greek culture. Depends on the occasions. I don't know, I like some of the background women, at least the designs of them. I like the fact that none of them look the same.
Yep.
Really gets he gets the look of the of like the, this is weird to say, but the ethnicity correct. I like that.
So yeah, then after that bit there, we move on to John Jones taking over the
Gotham City, 1955.
taking over the role of that scientist, at least for a brief while here.
Yes.
As he just tries to get to safety, because of course I forgot to mention that scientist was like, the world's not ready for you. Don't reveal yourself because it's a pretty dark time for.
Yeah, I love that speech that he had of just like saying the world is filled with both good and evil, and it's not ready for your kind yet. And that really does bring up an idea though of why everybody accepted Superman, but that obviously is because he does look like a Caucasian male, and John is way more not human looking. But I don't know, it's weird. He's from Mars and everybody's obsessed with that, but the fact that Clark came from, light years away and everybody's okay with it, I just find that fascinating. It's a kind of hypocrisy to that, I'd say.
Well, I mean, yeah, he looks like them. He doesn't look like another.
And they just give that away for free.
He may have abilities like another, but again, had Superman not gone along with the administration and had been acting as a vigilante, maybe the world would view him differently.
Oh, probably.
He's still their good old boy kind of thing.
It is a time of propaganda as well, so we don't see it obviously, but it could be a lot of propaganda going on that's making Superman as, oh yeah, he's just your average Joe.
Yep.
Look up to him like the fireman or the police officer or the milkman.
Yeah, but then after that we get a brief introduction to the Flash, very brief.
I just like to also say that I love the fact that Darwin Cook also says this in the liner notes, and I don't want to bring those up too much because people can obviously go look at those in the back regularly, but I loved all his liner notes that he was talking about, but I love the fact that he gets all his information from a television.
Yeah, I mean, it's in there too. We see him, that's how he learns about America and where he is and what humanity is.
It is wonderful. I got the little joke about tonight's show will return after this word from Hotspot Soda Pop. You can't get enough Hotspot. And then the next panel down, he's drinking the soda pop as Bugs Bunny. It's great. It's wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, did you also like that the Flash is reading an old school Flash comic from the first, was it, I know they mentioned the name later, I didn't write it down, was it Jay Garrick?
Jay Garrick, yes. That is the, I don't know if that's is it the Flash number 1? I don't remember. Yeah, Flash Comics, that is number 1. Yeah, it's the one where he stops a bullet with his hand. That's the opening, well, that's the cover art for that, which is pretty cool. Certainly a way to get people to read that, I'd say. Oh yeah, here we go. Two things become clear to me. The first is that this is a world where good and evil struggle in all levels of existence. I want to be a force of good. The second thing is that I need to find. Okay, that's where I got that quote from. Fair enough. Police Detective John Jones. I'll be one of the good guys. So yeah, we get the Central City in 1956, where, and by the way, these are all correspondent. Darwin Cook took the care and the attention to detail of keeping everybody's origin the same year they debuted, probably to the T of the month that happened. So it's funny that we have Hal Jordan, or at least later on Green Lantern, debuting in what was it, 1959, 3 years after The Flash and 4 years after Martian Manhunter already exists. That's pretty interesting. But we also get, the real world politics of, or real world events of Sputnik being released, and then the dog as well. I forget the dog's name, but I remember reading that somewhere about how after Sputnik, the Russians shot a dog into space and retrieved it successfully, which is nice. And then we have the big Eisenhower returning to his second term, and basically saying, yeah, we're basically going to catch up to the Russians because, yeah, we should do something about that 2 years later or something like that.
Yeah, but then we jump past that brief little introduction to Flash and get back to John Jones. And I love this little bit here, the way this other, I think he's like a private detective.
Yeah, maybe.
And how he describes the persona that the alien John Jones is portraying as this detective. He's just corny as a comic book, and he's all blast and by gosh.
Yep.
Like, I love his kind of took his whole persona from like a detective TV series or something.
Yep.
Yeah, and then they go on, and then we meet Batman too, fighting this cult of the Center. And I guess this is the second kind of look at the Center, and the first time we see that it's more than just that island, although I don't know if you could really, at this point, connect it back to the island. I don't think they quite give that connective tissue, but... Because the first time I was reading it, I kind of thought that stuff was spread out so sporadically that there wasn't really enough of a connection with the Center.
This is what I meant. Yeah, this is what I meant. I wish that there was more of a focus here, like we had more scenes of this, and I believe... Again, not to go into the movie, but I believe the movie kind of goes into that a little more, where they're, I think that because they drop a lot of stuff from the book, and I think focus more on the Center itself rather than the interactions of all these characters.
Oh, okay.
Which is fine. I think I don't remember because you said you just watched the movie, right?
Yep.
I could be wrong then. I thought they went into that a little more, but this is what I mean. Like we have this first scene of Batman kicking all kinds of butt. It's amazing. It's wonderful. It literally is a scene out of a comic book of Batman just taking on a cult. It's like, I want more of this. Like, why can't I have this? And then, yeah, we have... They didn't mention why the kid was kidnapped. Or not kidnapped, but like we know why, because it's for the blood of... I don't even know why. Like, the Center needs blood. Didn't say...
Yeah,
I don't remember anything about that, but...
Yeah, I don't really remember if this comes back. I thought it was more that this cult was just crazy and they thought they'd found some way to satisfy the whatever it is.
Well, that's probably it. It's probably a cult that believes the Center to be their god, but they don't realize what it really is. It's all muffled, and so they think, oh, to satisfy the Center and to maybe to please him, we'll sacrifice a kid. When that's really not what the Center wants. So it's a very human... It's a human-centered idea, not so much what the Center wants, objectively.
They do talk about how there's all this mass hysteria about the Center, especially as the book goes on.
Yep.
But yeah, I kind of wish that some of that stuff was a little bit more clear.
And that's what I meant by I want more integration and seeing kind of the mass hysteria. I don't want to say like, oh, maybe that's why people are so against superheroes and why they're all like, there's the Red Scare. Like, it would be so easy to label all the 50s like real world paranoia and like civil rights and prejudice and discrimination, all that stuff as, oh, it's all the Center's doing. But Darwin Cook doesn't do that, which I like. But it still would have been nice to see something more with the Center, unless, again, I need to read it again, but as of this reading, I didn't think there was a lot with the Center to do. But anyway.
Yeah, we'll get more into it as we get to the actual Center, but so in this scene we're introduced to, or at least Batman, I should say, is introduced to the weakness of fire for John Jones, which is going to come back in a good way later.
Yep, and one thing that does come from this later on is the book and the medallion.
Yeah, that's also there. Yeah.
Batman grabs the medallion off the leader guy who's about to stab the kid with the knife, and then John's the one that has the book. I
Yeah.
obviously got something to say about that, but I just love the fact that when Batman's trying to free the kid, doesn't even say anything. I didn't realize it, but he doesn't even say anything, and the kid just is like, "No, stay away, stay away." I love that. I love the fact that because he's such an urban legend, that the kid probably knows about it as well, and is just like terrified of like what the Batman is, and especially just what happened beforehand in the on page 100, where we get like again Batman just going to town, like abusing the no-kill rule to its logical extreme.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the descriptions of him, he sounds like just he's really on the edge right now.
It's the sound of the wrist breaking that finally does it. The remaining freaks run blubbering into the shadows. I'm pinned there like a moth on a board, unable to look away. And it's like,
Yep.
good grief.
Our coverage of DC: The New Frontier will continue in Part 2.